Hi everybody, it's Mr. Shakowski, putting together a video here that I hope will go a long way to explaining some of the details of our Citizens Handbook project, which I would like us to be starting this week and working on next week and finishing hopefully by the end of next week. So I'm going to start here and jump right in to what this project is about, okay? I guess actually the first thing I'm going to do is go to our website. So starting from here, I'm hoping you guys all have your Global Issues site favorite on your favorites bar already. And if you don't, you should email me and I can walk you through how to do that. But this is our site where we've been living and working from for the last few weeks now, a couple months really. And I want to just take a minute to remind you guys that the class discussion for this week is definitely one that is raging in the, I don't know what you call it, in the media right now. It's all over the place. And there was an email I'd sent out a couple days ago that highlighted several days where you could go back and read articles in the Free Press about this. And I've also mentioned a couple of columnists that have made a point of writing some serious articles about this issue. So class discussion number 4 due later this week, and I'm hoping you guys will have a chance, all of you will have a chance to have put your thoughts down, and then hopefully go back and challenge some other people's thoughts with respect to the discussion, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about it during our class on Friday afternoon. So that's just a quick reminder about this week's other major activity that's going on other than just keeping up with the news notes. So with that said, I do want to sort of remind you quickly now where you should be going for information on our Citizens Handbook. It's inside this projects folder, okay? And the first several links here all have to do with Citizens Handbook. They have the name Citizens Handbook in the title, and then very quickly it turns into information about the Newswatch project, which is usually a bigger project and one that we end the year with, and I'm still hoping very much that that's going to be the case for our course this year as well. I'm putting together, with the help of our librarian, an updated version of how to access different databases at DCI. We had a quick class on that a couple months ago now, if you remember, and we're going to do another class using screencast video to show you how to access these databases, and that's sort of the next step in order to be able to start doing real research with this project. So this project is on the horizon. It's probably a week or two away from me introducing you to it, and in the next week or two, what I'd like to do is put you into groups and have you working on this Citizens Handbook. Okay, so when you click open the full information package file, okay, it's a PDF document because it's really a collection of a bunch of different pieces, but in essence there is information, objectives, parameters in here that will explain to you what the big picture is on this project, as well as some of the details. And here's where you have to be very careful to be listening here and making a note somewhere about some of the small changes that I'm going to make to this project in order to streamline it, make it a little simpler, easier, hopefully quicker, and make it just a little easier for you to be able to work together in groups on this, even though we're not able to get together in groups physically. So first of all, I do want to start with just what the big picture objectives are of this project, okay, and they are listed here. And apart from the fourth one, which is going to be a little bit harder to do than usual, all these other ones still definitely apply in terms of what we're trying to show or demonstrate, okay, by doing this project. So main objectives are that you're going to demonstrate an understanding of a variety of current events. That's a major piece of this course and of this project. Okay, you're going to show that you've been able to analyze a variety of different media sources by doing this activity as well. So you get to the key word here, the V word in both cases is variety, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute, but just keep that in mind. What you're basically doing here is you're developing and articulating opinions on relevant issues and current events. And so this is basically just a more formalized more sophisticated, maybe a little bit more complex version of what we're already doing in our weekly class discussions, which I'm asking you to post 1 or 2 paragraphs in our class discussion forum on our website. This is now formalizing that and making it a bit more sophisticated. Okay, so I'm asking you to work in groups of actually 3 or 4, and there's a couple of groups that went to me or responded to my emails and gave me names of people that they want to work with or that have agreed to work together. And as for the rest of the groupings, I'm going to put them into the email instructions email, and I tried very much to keep the groups as similar as I could to what you'd already been working together, who you had already been working together with when we did our first group project of the year way back when you were exploring the newspaper and different online news sites. So you'll see who you should have already be aware of who you're working with just from reading that email. And so instead of groups of 2 or 3, we're expanding it to 3 or 4. That's going to slightly change some of the details here and some of these parameters, okay? So first of all, I am going to be asking you for 3 items altogether, okay? One of those items is going to be based on a local or provincial issue, news article or issue, okay? One of those pieces is going to be based on a national issue, something that's in the national news, okay? And the third area of your Citizens Handbook should focus on an international issue. And so that's the first piece that I want you to sort of recognize, is that we are going to sort of break this Citizens Handbook up into the 3 levels of news. And you're going to have to create something that represents a local or provincial issue, one that represents a national issue, and one that represents your thinking and opinion on an international issue. Okay. Now, your one of these 3 areas is going to be covered by you writing an editorial on that particular national or international or local topic and drawing your own political cartoon that is related to that issue. So one of these 3 artifacts or pieces that you're going to have to create for this project is actually a 2-part piece. You're going to write an editorial and you're going to draw your own political cartoon. Okay? And that has to apply to either a local issue, a national issue, or an international issue. And I'm going to show you some examples in a few minutes of what some previous cartoons have looked like, what some previous editorials have been on and like. I've been keeping for years now, or for going back several years, this sort of project from when I was doing it in the Contemporary Affairs course. So again, there's 3 pieces or 3 areas that you're going to have to represent in this project. Now, if you have a 4th person in your group, then you're going to need to do a 4th piece. But then you can decide whether you want to do a second provincial thing or a second national thing or a second international thing. But if you're in a group of 3, as most of you are, then your job is to divide who's going to do the local issue, who's going to do the national one, who's going to do the international story or issue. And then one of you is going to say, well, I'm taking on that editorial and political cartoon. I have a great issue that I want to write about and draw about. And this is something that I want you to recognize, that this is a group project, but you all should be taking responsibility for one of these areas and then helping each other in the other areas. Okay, so there's somebody's name is going to have to be attached to each of the pieces that you eventually put together, but I'm fully expecting that you will help each other write the editorial or help each other with ideas on how to draw the cartoon. And now, as for the other 2 pieces, what you're going to be asked to do is complete what's called a media journal on a news article that symbolizes or summarizes the other 2 issues. So if you decided to do an editorial on oh, I don't know, the Pallister's decision to make cuts to government workers, and you're going to draw a cartoon about that, and you're going to write an editorial about that, then that means the other two pieces now have to be a national issue and an international issue. Something, hopefully, that has, some, what's the word, some controversy about it, or more than one point of view about it, okay? So something that allows you to explore multiple points of view on it and eventually come to an opinion about that issue, okay? But that would mean in this scenario that I've just outlined that the other two members of the group are going to be finding a news article about that national issue and a news article about that international issue that they like, that they think is a good article, okay? And then they're going to write a media journal about that article. And so what I intend to see as your final product when this is all said and done, what I'm going to be looking for in your what we're going to be doing this in class OneNote. I'm going to be looking to see that you have 2 media journals and 1 editorial / political cartoon that you've created if you're in a group of 3. If you're in a group of 4, then you should have an extra media journal, and it can be on any level that you want it to be. But every group is going to have to demonstrate that they have an awareness and understanding, and that they've analyzed the issues of a local, a national, and an international topic of some sort. Okay, so some of this criteria for evaluation is now likely going to change. Yes, certainly I want to see completed media journals. I definitely want to see that each of your sources has come from a different newspaper or site. So you can't be sending me a news article from the Globe and Mail on some national issue and then another news article and doing a second media journal from the international issue also from the Globe and Mail. You're going to have to very deliberately seek out your news from a variety of sources, okay? You're going to have to make sure your topics are varied. So I'm not interested in reading a provincial issue that's COVID related and a national one that's COVID related and an international one that's COVID related. You're going to have to seek out other things in the news. And if COVID ends up being one of these 3 levels, okay. But the other ones have to be about other issues that are in the news right now, okay? And so again, variety of topics, variety of sources, fully completed media journals. The due date is something that I'm going to be expecting you guys to hold to, but it's a group project, and that lends itself to sometimes trickiness around getting everybody together in one spot at one time to work on this. And that makes it even harder now that we can't physically meet in class like we would have been able to if we had been doing this in normal times. So I get that there's going to be some issues around communicating and working together online. Class OneNote is one of the 2 places or ways that I'm going to suggest you guys can do this together and work together and show each other your work and get advice on how to make it better and synergize. And the other one is going to be through our teams, and you're going to be able to video conference with each other and chat with each other. And I'll show you quickly how to access those 2 programs again and give you a quick tour of how they are generally going to work. And probably what will happen is I'll put out a second short video just on the OneNote piece, because that's where you're likely going to be sharing your articles and your ideas with each other for the most part. And that's where I'm hoping you're going to eventually place your finished product so that I can go in and look at it. And other people will hopefully be able to do the same thing. And we can all have a look at each other's political cartoons and have a good laugh, okay? So yes, your editorial and your political cartoon is separate from the media journals, and it too should be completed. How attractive and creative and well organized this is a little bit tricky, because you're not handing in you're handing in more of a digital portfolio now instead of an actual paper portfolio like we would have. And so that I as long as you can put this together and it's organized, lovely. That's going to be great. Okay. Now the due date I'm not 100% sure about yet, but I'm definitely leaning towards it being due within the next 2 weeks. And in essence, you're going to be asked check in with me to make sure that you've shown me what you're thinking of doing for your 3 different levels of news as topics. And if you're not sure about an idea or about whether or not you found the right article to represent that national issue, these are things that I'm going to expect to be chatting with you guys about over the next week or so. Okay. So the due date, we'll post that on the calendar and talk more about it, in the next day or two. Maybe I'll have a due date set by Friday's class, and when we're online together in Microsoft Teams, you guys can ask me some questions right off the bat about everything you're hearing here and how you want to sort of move forward from that going into the weekend. So the rubric, which is the second part of this booklet, the second page of this booklet, shows you, to some extent how the marks are going to break down on this project, right? So the media journals require a bit more writing than the editorial does. They're worth a bit more marks as a result. The editorial and the political cartoon together are worth almost the same amount. And so the idea here, again, is your project has to have all its pieces in order to get all these marks. And you are going to share as a group the mark that you get for all of your parts. So you have an inherent need here and encouragement to work together to make sure that these pieces are all being done reasonably well. Okay. And again, organization, the use of a title page and a table of contents is not really going to matter at this point, and you're going to have to type the thing other than your political cartoon. So this piece of the marks probably not going to come into play in any major way. Now, the rest of this document goes on to demonstrate what a media journal is. You're going to have to read this carefully. I introduced this last Friday in our Teams class. Only about half of us were online at that time, and I'm not sure how many have gone on to watch or rewatch the video that was made of that class back then. And we'll definitely talk more about this Friday in our class coming up. But you're going to have to understand that, in essence, each media journal has different sections to it, or a typical media journal has different sections. Section 1 is just basic background info, your name, the date at the top of the page, and then, where did you get this article from? What was the name of the author? What's the information that I would need in order to go and source where this article came from? Excuse me. So now in the past, I have also allowed people to use a video clip, but in this case, I would like you to source out an either newspaper or internet article of some sort, a magazine article of some sort, and never mind the video clip piece, okay? You do need to give me this information, and hopefully, if you just link the URL or the link to the article itself, then that allows me to go and read the article before I try to read your media journal on that article. Okay. Now, section 2 is also in point form, and we just call it the 5 W's. So you're going to outline very briefly in 1 or 2 sentences for each, who is this story about? Never mind, the cartoon is not the option here. You have to do this on a news article. So you're not doing a media journal on a cartoon or a video, so you can disregard any mention about those things in how to write a media journal. So who's this issue about? What is this issue or story about? Where is it taking place? Generally, when is it taking place? If it's taking place over a period of weeks, then you can just say that and give me a time frame. Why? Now, here is the why, is sort of why something is an issue, or why something has happened that you're now reporting, like that this article is about. So the why part is something that you have to sort of explain a little bit more likely. Why has this issue been going on, or how is it an issue? Okay. And you got to get basically the basic facts. This is like a fast way to identify who, what, where, when, and why on your article and your issue. Okay. And then the next 2 sections are where you start writing in paragraphs. Okay. So section 3 is a summarizing or retelling of the article. Okay, and so you're going to write a summary paragraph or two that retells the issue, the story, the news article in your own words. You're not going to copy whole parts of the article. You're going to rewrite. In essence, what you're going to do is recreate the 5 W's, but you're going to do it in a paragraph form. Your summary should include at least one quote from the article, which is going to help explain generally what that article is arguing or what it's about. Okay. Now, once you've done section 3, then section 4, which should be the longest part of your media journal, that is where you get to delve into your personal reflections on the issue and your opinion. Okay, so this section is designed to have you develop an opinion or response. Some of the questions you might explore are, right? And so here's a bunch of different ways that you can then go on to demonstrate your thoughtfulness about this issue, right? And so, yes, you should sort of recognize that the article was either trying to demonstrate or argue something potentially, or demonstrate that there's more than one side to this issue, okay? And you need to then tell me whether you agree or disagree with that article and about some of its proposed solutions that were mentioned in it, right? If there are better ways to address this issue, what would they be? Are there other possible solutions? Was there information that was missing from this article that would have helped you make a more informed opinion? What are generally your beliefs about this issue? Okay, so all or any of these should form the basis for your section 4. And you literally could go and use this as a bit of a checklist and make sure they're all covered in some way through the course of section 4, right? Now, you'll be marked on how well you argue your position. So the more evidence that you present to support your point of view, the better. If some of that evidence comes from this article because you're agreeing with some member or some quote from it, great. But you also can bring in, other information from other sources that would help you to make your point, right? So if you can relate what you've read in your article to something else you've read elsewhere or are aware of, then that also helps with respect to making your opinion a stronger one. It's based on not just your personal thoughts, but something else that you've read. Okay. Now, what comes next in this booklet is an article from a while ago now, back when Obama was president, and he won the Nobel Peace Prize early on in his presidency. And a student back at that time chose this article as their media journal article for their Citizens Handbook. And so you would have to read this article briefly to get a sense of what it's talking about, right? There was a controversy about that issue back then. Some people felt that it was premature for Obama to be receiving a Nobel Peace Prize simply because he was the first black man who became president, and he talked about bringing peace to the Middle East. He had barely been president for I don't know how many months, and already the Nobel Committee awarded him this highest of honors. And a lot of people thought that was wrong, and that he didn't deserve a prize of that stature for the limited amount of effect that he had on the world thus far in his presidency. Okay, so you can see here is part 1, right? The name and the date of the person who wrote the media journal, what date they wrote it on, and then this area here shows where this came from, the title, the author of the article, the date that the article was printed, and then the URL or HTTP address. Okay, now again, ideally, all of these things are things that you can source out when you're looking for the article that you are going to ultimately write your media journal on. Okay, and this was their international media journal, and so that's part of the heading right here, media journal number 2, international. Great. And this group would have done a media journal number 1 on maybe a national story, and they would have done a political cartoon and an editorial together on the same topic, and that might have been a local topic. Okay, so this is just one piece of the larger Citizens Handbook that was created by this student and her group members. Now, this is part 2, the 5 W's. You can see how she summarized the who, what, where, when, and why of this article and its issue. Okay, this is part 3 here. and this is the recap of the article. Okay, and you can see embedded in here is more than one quote that this student has chosen to insert at critical points in time where they're trying to explain the big picture of what this article was about and what were the arguments being presented in it. Okay, now you can tell part 4 starts when they use the I voice. I really have mixed feelings about this. And they go on to talk about, on the one hand, this is one argument, one way you can feel about this. And they go on to talk more about that argument, and then they say on the other hand. And so what this person has done in multiple paragraphs for part 4, by far the longest part of their media journal for sure, is they have demonstrated that they understand there's more than one point of view to this issue, and yet they still feel this particular point of view, their personal opinion, is where they're going. So ideally, you should be looking for an issue that has more than one point of view to it. You're going to have to look for a controversial news topic or issue. And then when you find an article that does illustrate that issue or talk about it and point out different aspects of that issue, then you do your media journal on that news story, on that news issue, that news article. Okay? And so you should be reading carefully what how this person, Allison, wrote her media journal to get a sense of what a very good one should look like. Okay, you likely will need more than one page, but you should not be writing more than 2 pages. That's a hard cap. I don't want people writing too much or going into too much detail or into the weeds here. You should be able to summarize the 4 parts of your media journal within 2 pages quite easily. And this is what I would call on the longer side of what a media journal usually looks like to me. Okay, and so they concluded what they thought about the whole issue in the end. They summed it up on their own. Okay, now only in part 4 of a media journal should I be seeing you use the I voice. And even then, you don't necessarily have to use the I voice. You could just say, this is the right way, or this is the issue that matters, or this is the solution that is the best. But if you are going to personalize it, great, but you should not be inserting your opinion into the 3rd part of your media journal. That should just be a summary of the article itself. Okay, so after that, the rest of this booklet has a couple of good examples of what editorials look like. And so again, this was something I talked about and showed you briefly on Friday in our last class, virtual class, and likely, this will be back on the screen this Friday. In essence, what you're doing with an editorial, and remember, the editorial is something that you should be writing to go with the political cartoon that you've drawn. And all of the symbolism and stuff should be visible in your cartoon. You're not supposed to deconstruct the cartoon for me. You're going to just go right into your group's opinion about the issue that cartoon symbolizes. Okay? And so I think the last few minutes here of this video, what I'm going to do is just go to the video, the camera, and just show you quickly. So this is I've got lots and lots of great examples over the years of cartoons, right? So this is one that I'm hoping some of you, at least who followed the news for a while, will recognize. This is our former Prime Minister, Stephen Harper. So this person could draw, and that's obviously a great bonus for if somebody's got artistic ability, then they're likely the one who should be drawing the cartoon of the group, okay? But it's not necessary, okay? This could easily have just had a name tag on here or something to show me that that's who you meant, right? But in this case, it's a cartoon about anti-vaxxers. So this issue has been in the news off and on over the last many years now, and the question at the time came, the question was raised, should the government insist on young people getting vaccinations before those people are allowed to go to school, where they could then spread diseases that they're not vaccinated on? And so, this represents the government's using what some people would argue is common sense. And then a farmer, why would I say farmer? I don't even know what the heck that meant, where that came from. I don't know why a parent is represented by the donkey. I'd have to think a bit more about that. But, the kid is already suffering from something. The parent doesn't want the government interfering with their choice on whether to vaccinate their own child. And in the meantime, death here. I think this is the guy. Yeah, there it is, his sickle, right? He represents death, and he's just having a ball because people are dying from diseases that don't need to be, because they're refusing vaccinations. And so this is a very interesting. This cartoon could have been, published in a newspaper. It was very well done. There's lots of interesting little symbolism around it. And again, I'm not sure about the donkey piece. Maybe it's the fact that they're being asses for refusing vaccinations for their children. I don't know. That's something that might have come up in their in the corresponding editorial, right? So this was what their editorial was about then, right? Anti-vaxxers' responsibility to vaccinate their children. And so it lays out what the issue's about, right? And then goes on to talk about what some anti-vaxxers argue this, but this is plain wrong because, or we agree with this because, and hopefully you're able to come up with an editorial that the group has had a chance to discuss, and maybe one of you takes the lead on writing the actual editorial, but everybody should have a say in it. And if it turns out that your group is internally conflicted, you can't all agree on the solution to this problem, or whether some of you agree with one side, some of you agree with the other side, then just make sure that both sides are represented in your editorial. And so the editorial itself is kind of like a part 4 of a media journal. It goes straight into your opinion, right? You're doing a little bit of recapping of the issue, okay? But mostly you're jumping right into your opinion and arguing, whether you can argue against the other side just to show that you know that there is another side to this story, but you can come down quite heavily on one side. You don't have to worry about balancing it out equally. And that's the job of an editorial, is to make sort of an informed argument that tries to persuade people of a particular solution. So this group, their editorial came down against anti-vaxxers. Okay, so in any case, this is an example of this is one part of your project. Okay, and in this case, this probably would have been considered the national, right? This was a national issue. And so they wrote an editorial and drew a cartoon about that national issue. And then this same group would have also included a media journal on a local issue and a media journal on an international issue that would have been written by other members of the group. Okay, so again, these are examples of what these used to look like when we were able to put together physical copies of things and create nice organized packages. And at this point, I'm not really concerned about tables of contents and title pages, but when it comes to, when it comes to finding a good article somewhere, either online, what's going to most likely be online, then writing your media journal about that. Okay. And so again, Part 1, basic info around where the articles come from. The 5 W's is Part 2. Part 3 is a recap of the article and the issue in general. And then Part 4 would have gone on to another page, and it would have talked about their opinion about this issue and its solutions. And so to go back to, and then we'll finish here, what you're trying to do is create a bit of a collection of issues, articles, an editorial, a cartoon, and this collection is being structured by local, national, and international issues. And I'd like minimum 3 things to be included. If you have a 4th member of your group, then you get to pick another media journal and do a second media journal at one of these levels. But minimally, you should be showing me a wide variety of understanding of current events, and that variety needs to be on different levels of news. Okay, so remember, if you're going to pick a COVID-related issue, then that should be for one level only, and the other 2 levels then have to be on other things. And I mean like directly related to COVID, right? So if you wanted to pick a local issue on Pallister's decision to make cuts to the civil service, that's related to COVID in a roundabout way, but it definitely would count as an interesting political issue, economic issue that people are talking about, and that you would certainly be able to use that as a local issue if you wanted to delve deeper into that, and then still have something else related to, I don't know what, vaccine development, or whether people should be banned from parks, or other things that are going on in other parts of the world, let's say. Okay. Now remember, this is something that you should be working in partners on. And so what I'm going to do is go back to our website and just remind you that you have a class OneNote. I'm going to be looking at these in the coming days to see how you're doing on your news notes. But when you click this link, okay, you are being taken to a class OneNote, and I will be building into here, okay, some way to house your group's materials, all just in its own subcategory. So right now, you guys don't see everybody's individual name. I do, because I have all the students in the class in here. But what I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet exactly, but somewhere, probably inside the collaboration space, I am going to create tabs. I might create a new tab that's called Citizens Handbook, and then I'm going to create sub-tabs that have your names. Your group's members are the ones that are allowed inside that tab, and you can talk to each other in there. You can share Word documents. You can show each other, send each other pictures or whatnot, or you can just use it as a place to collect the pieces as you're building them. And eventually, that's where I'll be going to see your final products and what your group has been able to create. So I need some help building this, and I'm going to be getting a colleague to help me with that in the next day or two. But for now, there's no reason why you can't start communicating with your group members and start figuring out who's doing the local issue, who's doing the national, who's doing the international, who's going to do a media journal, and who's going to be the drawer of the cartoon and the writer of the editorial. Those kinds of decisions can now be starting to be made. You can certainly start looking for articles, and as soon as I have this space created properly, I'll send it another video, and it'll help you understand how to use it a bit more. Okay. And again, the only other piece that I'll remind you about is Microsoft Teams. And inside there, when you click on the Teams tab here and you go to all teams, one of these should be Global Issues, Mr. S. And when you click on that one, you'll be able to see a general chat stream that we've been using minimally, really. It's mostly me reminding you about upcoming classes, and if you want to watch any classes that you've missed, they're going to be posted here. The Global Issues chat channel, a whole bunch of you have now chimed in and said hello just to show me you know how to use it, and you're welcome to continue to use it for anything to do with our course. But probably what I'll do is create a sub-channel here that will allow people to talk just about Citizens Handbook issues. And again, I'm going to figure out how to do that in the short term. If you want to chat with each other, you can. And if you want to simply phone each other, you can go to the calls, type in the name of a person. Well, there's Jamie right there. So I can type in that person's name and they'll come up, and I should be able to call them or video conference them just by pressing that button. And so you should be able to talk with each other through each other's computers reasonably easily with this program as well. Okay, and if I can build a situation where you can chat in groups with your own group, I will do that. It may be that we just end up using this space to chat with each other as needed and phone each other as needed. And so you can just add 2 names to the group, and hopefully that works. If it doesn't, I'll figure that out. But for now, I just wanted to put this out and give you a chance to understand more how this project works. I'm going to render this video and post it. You guys should be getting it Wednesday afternoon, and we'll be talking more by Friday in our class. I'm expecting you'll all have watched this, understand a bit more about how this project works, and you're coming to Friday armed with any questions you might have, as well as your 2 cents worth on this week's debate topic. Okay, so that's the goal for our project and for the coming week or two. I'll let you digest what you've seen and heard here, and then we'll be talking with some more questions and answers in the next day or two. Cheers, everybody. Take care.